Bonjour, welcome to Wahsa Citizens Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is MEL3E, grade 11 workplace math, and I'm the teacher Bronwyn Slate. If you'd like to participate live today, you can call the Wahsa studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017. You can also listen to the radio at 91.9 FM and on the television at Bell Express View channel 972. You're always welcome to join me live through the Zoom link, which is available both from me, your teacher, and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled Monday through Thursday from 9 until 10 in the morning, and we are in our 6th week of our 9-week course. At this point, you definitely should be submitting work for marking. So just a quick reminder that the support questions, the ones with the little pencil icon, are not for marking. You decide which ones and how many to do. If you're understanding a concept, it is okay to skip these practice problems. I'd still encourage you to do some of them to just make sure you're actually on the right track. But if it really makes sense to you and there's a whole bunch of questions, you don't need to do them all just because they're there. Also, if you need more practice, please send me a message and I'm happy to send you more practice just to really make sure that you're comfortable and confident with these concepts. The key questions, however, the ones with the little key icon, these ones are the ones to submit for marking. And these ones you need to do all of them. I'm marking them all, so do them all, please. Show all your work, your steps, and your thinking. This way I can really understand what it is that you understand. And if you're making any mistakes, it gives me more information so that I can actually figure out how to support you and help you. So please show me your work. Okay, so then how do you actually submit your work for marking? Well, there's 3 methods. The first is to scan your work and send it electronically. If you have a device, you can use that device to scan your work. So if you have an Apple device, like an iPhone or an iPad, you can use the Notes app and then you can scan using that app. If you have an Android device, like a Pixel or I don't know, there's a whole bunch of different Android devices. You can use the Google Drive app that has a scan function. These are pretty straightforward to use, but if you need some help on my YouTube channel, there are tech tutorials that walk you through step-by-step how to use each of these apps. So go check those out to see if you can figure out how to scan. This just makes your files a little bit smaller and easier to send. So you don't have to do it. You can still send me pictures, but if you want to try scanning it out, go check that out. Then you can send them to me either through email to studentwork@nnec.owen.ca and CC me directly at bronwyn.slate@nnec.owen.ca. Or you can send them to me through Facebook Messenger, where my name is bslatewahsa. The second method is to drop your work off in Sioux Lookout. We have an outdoor mailbox at 74 Front Street. We are the bright red building next to the post office and have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. So you can just put your work in there at any time and we'll get it back to you as soon as we can. The third method is to hand your work into your DEC. Your DEC can either send your work through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732 or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. Students can also fax in their work, but just give us a heads up that it's coming because sometimes things get lost. If you'd like to connect with me through social media, both my Facebook and my YouTube channel are under the name bslatewahsa. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded and I upload them to YouTube shortly after broadcasting. So they're really easy to find there and that's all linked through my Facebook. We have a playlist called MEL3E where you can find all of this year's lessons as well as some extra support videos and also a link to previous times that I've taught the course in case checking out a different video, maybe I explain something slightly differently or go through different examples could be useful for you. Also, as I said, there are short videos on my YouTube channel that explain common errors and confusing concepts. So if there are some things that people really struggle with. So if you check that out, there might be a video there that walks you through that concept, even if it's not directly related to our actual content. Math is a really visual subject, so I strongly encourage you to access the videos, both YouTube, watching that on your own time, or joining me live through the Zoom lessons. Whether or not you talk to me, you don't have to, that's fine. But these are great options. If neither of those work for you, let me know, and I'm happy to send you a copy of the recordings so that you still get the full experience. So if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out and connect with me. You can send me an email at bronwyn.slate@nnec.owen.ca. Connect with me through Facebook, where my name is B. Slate Wahsa. Call me at the office at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free 1-800-667-3703. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I teach from 9 to 11, so that's not a really good time to try to get a hold of me. Today's lesson 15 is leasing vehicles, and we are wrapping up the third unit of our IL booklets. So this is our last lesson in unit 3. So our learning goals are that at the end of this lesson, you will be able to calculate the total costs of leasing a vehicle, and you'll understand the fine print and procedures involved in leasing a vehicle. You know that you've met these learning goals because you can calculate leasing costs, and you can explain the most likely fine print and the procedures whenever you choose to lease a vehicle. When will you use this in real life? Well, we're learning about how information is communicated. So it's possible you might never choose to lease a vehicle. That's totally fine. I never have. But understanding how information is organized and communicated is a really important skill, as that is something that shows up in our lives in various different places, looking at contracts, looking at the fine print, realizing that we might not have all the information, and therefore how do we figure out information that we don't have. So this is all a really important skill development that you can use in various situations in your life. But first, of course, let's do some mental math and activate our brains. I don't believe in mad math minutes. Hopefully you realize this by now, as they cause stress and anxiety in students and don't actually teach skills. They generally just freak people out, make math a little bit more miserable. So instead, we work on developing strategies based on what we're comfortable with, what tools we have, and go from there based on our own individual experience. So our question today is 84 divided by 6, and we're using the concept of shared groups. So usually when people start to divide, they make their groups. So I've got 6 groups, and I'm going to put one thing in each of these groups until I run out of things. And that's totally a good way to start division. But with 84 things, that's a lot of things to do one in each group until we run out. That's going to take a long time, right? So instead, what we're going to do is, why aren't you erasing? That's just my life. We are going to share bigger groups than just one at a time. So I can see, I'm going to try starting with a nice friendly number, and I'm going to start with 10. So if I do 10 in this group, 10 in this group, so at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay, so I've shared 60 of my things already, and I still have 84 as my total, so I haven't run out of my things yet. Okay, so if 84 is my total and I've already shared 60, that means I have 24 more things to share. Well, that means I can't share any more groups of 10, and even 5, because that would be 30, would be too much. So I'm going to share 2 things because I'm not sure what might work. So I'm going to try. So I had 60, so 62, 64, 68, 70, 72, 74. Well, I still have more things. Going to see if I can share 2 things again. So 76, 78, 80, 82, 84. That seems like too many. But I feel like I must have miscounted somewhere. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 62, 64, 66, 68, 70, 72, 74, 76, 78, 80, 82, 84. There we go. I felt like I had two more to share. So now we can say, okay, how many is in each group? So if we add them all together, so we have 10 plus 2 plus 2 equals 14. Each group has 14. So 84 divided by 6 is 14. So this can be a great way to still use the tool of sharing, which can be really accessible. But instead of having to do one thing at a time, doing friendly numbers can get you closer faster. So that's another strategy for division. Okay. Mine's on. What information do we need to know today when we're talking about leasing vehicles? I just want to go over a little bit of vocabulary, as this isn't necessarily something that everybody's super familiar with. So with open-end leases, this is a lease that requires the consumer to pay the difference between the vehicle's residual value, so the leftover value, and its actual value when the lease ends. So the lease, in case you're not sure, a lease is like renting a vehicle. You don't own it. You have it for a set period of time, and you pay a set amount, and then you give it back to the dealership afterwards. So with an open-end lease, you can buy the vehicle after leasing it, and you're paying the leftover value of the vehicle at the end of your lease. So you're buying it for a lower amount at this point. Termination fee, or could also be called a disposal or deposition fee, is the amount the lessee, so the person who leases, must pay at the end of a close-end lease if they choose not to pay the residual value and buy the car. So if you decide to just end your lease, then you have to pay a fee. And that's the thing with leases, is that often there are various different kinds of fees you end up paying. A security deposit is a cash sum, so a lump of money that you, the leaser, are required to pay at the beginning of the lease as a safeguard against any non-payment. So you're saying, if for some reason I don't pay, you get to keep my security deposit. Usually it's about 1 month payment. And if at the end of your lease, you get it back if you always paid your payments on time and there's no damage to the vehicle. Mileage allowance is the maximum number of miles a leased vehicle can be driven per year without having to pay a penalty. So this is always stated at the beginning of your lease, on your lease contract, saying, okay, you can drive this many kilometers. If you do it more than that, then you have to pay an extra fee. Wear and tear charges. So these are for if you have any damages to your leased car that are greater than normal and reasonable wear and tear. So it makes sense that driving a vehicle, there are going to be little dings or little scratches potentially on the vehicle just because you're using it. That's okay. But in your lease, it's going to tell you what it is that you have to be careful of, what repairs you might need to make, because you might end up having to pay a really big fee afterwards at the end of your lease if there's damages that the dealership decide do not meet the agreement. Early termination is when the consumer, you end your lease before the agreed upon time. So ending your lease early can again have a hefty fee. So as you can see, there's lots of different things that potentially when you're leasing, you could end up paying more money because of. A default charge is if you have a late payment, then you get charged an extra fee. So those are just some important vocabulary to know as we move forward so that you know the various types of things that you might end up having to pay for if you're leasing a vehicle. But let's look at what leasing a car actually just straight up is. So this is on page 40 of your IL booklet. So a car lease allows you to drive a brand new vehicle for a fixed period at an agreed upon monthly rate. So it's like a long-term rental. And once the fixed lease period is over, which is typically between 2 to 4 years, then the customer must either return the car to the leasing company or purchase it for market value. There are extra fees like we talked about, which could be security deposit, which is refundable at the end of the lease, the down payment, any excess kilometer usage fees, and also HST on your monthly payments. At the end of your lease, you have 3 options. You can return the vehicle and lease a new one, get a new car. You can purchase the vehicle at a predetermined price and keep it. You can return the vehicle and just walk away and have no more ties to that dealership. So what are the benefits of leasing? So leasing is often only for 3 years, like I said, 2 to 4 years, and you get a new car more often. So you can drive the latest safety and driving technology with potentially better fuel economy. So those can be great options. The payments of leases are generally lower than a car loan when you're working towards having the car, owning it outright. There are lower maintenance costs because as it's a new car, you're always covered by the factory warranty. So if anything goes wrong with the vehicle, that is not due to an accident or due to some sort of driver malfunction, then the warranty covers it. So you're not going to have to pay for it. Leasing doesn't require a car loan approval or a hefty down payment, an upfront payment. You might have to have a little payment, but you don't necessarily have to have a huge payment. And therefore, if you don't have great credit, this means that you don't have to be approved for a car loan, which you might not be if you don't have great credit. And as I said, there's no lower, or there might be a lower or a very, there might not be any down payment at all. So then what are the disadvantages of leasing? It has limited mileages. So if you drive a lot, if you drive really far distances, then this is not a great option for you because that is restricted. They want to keep the mileage low on the vehicle because they're probably going to try to resell it after you're done leasing it, or they're going to lease it to somebody else, and low mileage is important. It can mean that you have a higher insurance rate, not necessarily all the time, but this is something that does happen. There are various fees, as we've talked about already, that arise at the end of your lease. So all of a sudden, these surprise costs that you weren't planning for, that can be really high. The monthly lease payment goes towards the use of the vehicle instead of the ownership of the vehicle. So you're not getting any equity in the vehicle. You're just paying for the use of it. You're not allowed to make irreversible custom changes or modifications to your vehicle. This is something that's important to you. You can't change the vehicle in any way. You cannot end your lease inexpensively or easily before your normal contract end date. So if life changes, you need to move, you need a different vehicle. If you're locked into a contract and it's going to cost you a bunch of money to get out of that. And it can be stressful to have excess wear and tear charges. So if you're someone who has a lot of anxiety and gets really worried about keeping things really organized and in good shape, this might not be a great option for you because that's what you want to do is keep it in good shape. Life happens and some things are out of your control. So that's going to cause you more stress and anxiety. Then that might not be a great option for you. So here is a little bit of an infographic that just directly relates buying a car to leasing a car. So if we're looking at the money, when you buy a car, you generally require more money upfront and more money for your monthly payments, where a lease costs less, both in terms of a down payment upfront or each month. So either you can have lower payments or you can pay a higher amount and get a more expensive car if that's something that's important to you. The bills, you can pay off your car loan eventually. then you own the vehicle and you don't have that monthly cost. With a lease, you're always paying a monthly payment. So that never stops. With a commitment, if you buy it, then you have the freedom to sell or trade it in whenever you want. With a lease, it's really hard to break that contract and it can be really expensive. Overall, it usually costs less to buy a car overall, not necessarily upfront, but in the long run, in terms of interest, in terms of everything, fees, it's less to buy a vehicle. Whereas leasing, you can get a tax break if you're using the car for business purposes. So that could be a good option for you. When you're buying a car, usually vehicles may last for like up to 20 years. So then you can do whatever you want within that. You can sell it, you can wreck it, you can drive it, you get to do whatever you want. Whereas with a lease, you are upgrading to a newer model if you keep leasing every couple of years. When you're buying, remember, we talked about depreciation before. So as soon as you buy your vehicle, you're losing value. Whereas with leasing, that isn't as much of a concern because you don't own it. So you're not losing any value. But there are various fees that we've talked about that could really add up and make you end up paying a lot more than you expect. All right, so let's look at an example about what this actually plays out to be. So the conditions of a lease are given below. How much will be paid to use the car for 3 years, assuming the security deposit is returned? So it's a $2,500 down payment, $300 refundable security deposit, 3 years of monthly payments of $374.56, and we have to pay HST on each of the monthly payments, not on the deposit or the down payment. So first, let's calculate the HST. You don't have to do that first, but that's what I'm going to do. So there's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could first just calculate the HST on each payment and then do all the monthly payments, multiply all the monthly payments together, how many there are, or you could figure out how much you pay in total monthly payments and then do the HST. Let's do the payment, $374.56 times 0.13. So that is how much tax we're going to be paying so that we can figure out exactly what our monthly payment is going to be. 374.56 times 0.13. So the tax is going to be $48.69. So that means the total payment is $374.56 plus $48.69, which is equal to, and remember, as always, you can do these slightly differently than I'm doing them, and that's totally fine. It's okay to do it in a way that makes sense to you. So the total payment is going to be $423.25. Okay, so that's one payment. A monthly payment. So in terms of how much you're going to have to pay in total over the 3 years, so you have to pay at the beginning, you have to pay $2,500. Plus you also pay the $300 security deposit, plus over the 3 years, so that's 36 payments, because 3 times 12 is 36, times $423.25 is going to be how much you pay overall over the full 3 years. So let's add that up together. Miss a decimal place, make a big difference. So that's $18,037. So that's how much you have to pay, but we assume that the security deposit is returned, so you didn't miss any payments, you don't have any big damage. So with the deposit returned, that means you get that $300 back. So we're going to take that $300 off, and that means that we end up paying $17,737 over the 3 years. By the end of the 3 years, that's how much we paid. Okay, example 2. So here, another conditions of another lease are given below. How much will be paid to use the car for 5 years, assuming the security deposit is not returned? Okay, so this time we have a $5,000 down payment. We have a refundable $450 security deposit. We have 5 years of monthly payments of $483.96. And we still have to pay HST on each of the monthly payments. So let's again do HST. This time I'm going to do, so my monthly payments is $483.96. This time I'm going to times that by 1.13, because remember that means that I don't have to add it at the end. It already tells me what the total payment is because it includes both the price and the tax. 483, and you can do either of these ways. So $546.87. Okay, so that's the monthly payment. Okay, so then the total is going to be the down payment, so $5,000 plus the security deposit, $450, plus then how many payments do we have this time? So let's think about it. Well, it's going to be 5 years times 12 months, and then that times $547.87. So if you know that 5 times 12 is 60, you can just do 60 times $547.87. If you don't know that and you want to do it, you say 5 times 12 to get that amount, that's totally fine too. Again, multiple ways to get to the same place. So 5,000 plus 450 plus 60 times $547.78 equals $38,322.20. So that to me seems like a lot of money. Just have a vehicle for 5 years. So this must be a very expensive vehicle, I would assume, because we have a high payment, it's a super high payment. We have a high down payment. But if that's something that's important to you, having a really fancy vehicle, maybe that's a great option for you. I don't know. Different reality than mine. All right, so now you can do the support questions on page 41, question number 1. So then I've mentioned this kilometer surcharge fee. So let's look into that, what that means. And this is on page 42 of your IL booklet. So as I've said before, when you're leasing, the vehicle has a maximum kilometers usage. So you're only allowed to use so many kilometers, or else they start charging you more money. So if you go over this maximum usage, you have to pay an extra amount called a surcharge. So for every extra kilometer, you pay a certain amount, and this is going to be in your contract. So here, as an example, calculate the kilometer surcharge if the allowable usage is 75 75,000 kilometers when the actual usage was 94,367 kilometers and the surcharge was 14 cents per kilometer. So we need to figure out two things. So first, we need to figure out the extra kilometers because we don't pay 14 cents for every kilometer we drove because we first get this 75,000 kilometers for free. So first we need to figure out how many extra kilometers. So we do that by taking our total number of kilometers, 94,367 kilometers, take away 75,000. So our total kilometers, take away the amount we were allowed to use, and we figure out how many extra kilometers we had. We had 19,367 extra kilometers. So then our second step is to figure out how much the cost was for those extra kilometers. So that means for the 19,367 kilometers, we paid 14 cents for each of those kilometers. So we're going to multiply it by 0.14 to pay our 14 cents per kilometer. So that means that we pay an extra $2,711.38. So as always, we can go back and read our question, make sure we answered it. Calculate the kilometer surcharge if the allowable usage was 75,000 kilometers. So we did that. We figured out the kilometer surcharge. So we could say the surcharge would be $2,711.38. This is something, again, that you don't necessarily keep track of until the end. So it can be a bit of a surprise that you end up owing them almost $3,000 more. All right, another example. Calculate the kilometer surcharge if the allowable usage was 50,000 kilometers when the actual usage was 48,732 kilometers and the surcharge was 9 cents per kilometer. So again, remember, we've got two steps. So we need to figure out the extra kilometers and then the cost. So here we were allowed to use 50,000 and we used 48,732 kilometers. Now, often people are going to say, okay, I'm going to do my bigger number, 50,000, take away my smaller number and figure out how much extra. But we don't want to do that. We want to use our brains. We want to think about what is actually going on, because I was allowed to use 50,000 and I only used 48. So did I use more than I was allowed? No, I didn't. So there's no extra kilometers. You could do the subtraction and do your actual usage, the 48,732, and subtract the 50,000 and you get a negative number to show that you still had more kilometers to use. You don't have to do that. You can just say there's no extra kilometers because I was allowed to use 50,000 and I only used 48,732. So because there's no extra kilometers, we don't have a charge, so we don't have to do any more calculations. So pay attention to those options. Don't just assume that you do the same thing with the numbers all the time. Sometimes you need to actually think and interpret the question. Now you can do the support questions on page 42 to 43, questions 2 to 3. All right, so then I just wanted to go over a few steps in how it actually works to lease a car, as if it's something you're interested in doing. Understanding the process can be tricky. So this was an infographic that I found that walks you through 5 steps to leasing a car. So first, you want to figure out how long you want to have your vehicle for. So if you do it for longer than 3 years, this can reduce your monthly payments, but you run the risk of experiencing more problems that aren't covered under the warranty because the warranty might only last 3 years. Then you want to figure out your price range, and you really want to be realistic with this in terms of what you can afford and what is realistic in your own financial world. Then it's a great idea to check out for any deals. This is totally something that car dealerships advertise different deals for, to see if you can get any sort of incentive or a price break. So do your research there. Then once you've picked out your price range, then look down at the type of option of your vehicles. So it's better to pick a car based on what you can afford, opposed to figuring out if you can afford a car that you want. This might not be the most fun way to do it, but it's the more financially responsible way to do it. Then negotiate with a dealership and sign your contract. So doing your research ahead of time is a really good idea to set yourself up for success when you're negotiating. This can be a really challenging thing. Some people have the great skill set, are able to negotiate with car dealerships. Other folks do not have that skill set. I do not have that skill set. It definitely stresses me out, but figuring out what's best for you is a great idea. Okay, so let's look at an example of all of the things that we've talked about today put together. So Lacey wants to lease a vehicle for her business under the following conditions. She's a 5-year term. She has $2,200 down payment. The monthly payments of $295. She has a security deposit of $500. She also needs to pay a delivery charge of $415 and a kilometer allowance of 25,000 kilometers per year with 15 cents per kilometer for any additional kilometers she uses. The residual value at the end of the lease is $10,500, including taxes and fees. So first, how much will it cost her to lease the vehicle for 5 years if she returns the vehicle in good condition, having driven 130,000 kilometers? So there's a lot going on in this question, so you really need to break it up and not get overwhelmed by the numbers. Don't just throw all the numbers together and hope for the best. Really think logically what's going on. So if she returns the vehicle in good condition, that means she's going to get her security deposit back. So that means we can kind of just ignore the security deposit because, yes, we would add it in and then we subtract it off. So I'm just going to ignore the security deposit because we're going to assume that she gets it back. Now, this number of kilometers, 130,000 kilometers, seems like so much compared to 25,000 kilometers, but that's per year. So we need to figure out the total kilometers that she's allowed to do. So let's figure out the total allowable kilometers. So that's 5 years times 25,000. Well, I know that 4 times 25,000 would be 100,000. So 5 times 25,000 is going to be 125,000 kilometers. Over the 5 years is how much she's allowed to have. So the extra kilometers is 130,000. Take away 125,000. So that's 5,000 kilometers that she drove that is extra. Okay, she drives a lot. So then let's figure out the cost of those kilometers. As you can see, giving yourself some sort of organizational structure helps. Mine is a bit squished because I don't have a ton of room, but figuring out, giving yourself some sort of titles helps you keep yourself organized. So we have 5,000 times 15 cents. So that is going to be, I probably could do it in my head, but I also don't have to. $750. So she's gonna have to pay an extra $750. So then what is the question even asking us? I don't remember. How much will it cost her to lease the vehicle for 5 years if she returns it in good condition, having driven this many kilometers? Okay, so we figured out the kilometers, how much it's going to have to cost her for the extra kilometers. So the total is going to be the down payment, $2,200, plus the monthly payments of $295, but that is for 5 years. So 5 times 12 times $295, plus the security deposit of $500, which then gets back. So we're not going to add it and subtract it in. We're just going to leave it off. Plus a delivery of $415, plus the extra kilometers, which is $750. The last part that says the residual value of the lease is $10,500 isn't useful information for us for this part of the question. So sometimes there might be information that you don't actually need for this part of the question. So we add these all up together. Again, you can do it slightly differently. You should still get to the same place where we have $21,065. So that's how much after the end of 5 years, that's how much Lacey has paid for the vehicle. Okay, so if Lacey purchases the vehicle at the end of the lease, how much will she pay for it? So at the end of the lease, so she's already paid $21,065. At the end of the lease, she can buy the car for the residual value, for the leftover value, which is $10,500. So if we add those together, we get $31,565. So in total, Lacey would pay, oops, spell that word wrong. $31,565. So depending on the vehicle, that might be a good deal, might not be. You decide if that makes sense for you. But that's what it means when you have the residual value, that you pay that on top of everything else that you've already paid. Okay, let's consolidate what we have learned so far, or what we've learned in this lesson today. So we are doing lesson 15 today, which is leasing a vehicle, wrapping up unit 3. So leasing a car is a long-term rental. There are both pros and cons. There's really not a better way to do this or a right way to live life. You decide for you and your household what makes the most sense. The kilometer usage surcharge is really something to consider because you need to figure out how much excess mileage, any extra kilometers you use, and then you multiply that by the surcharge rate to figure out how much you're going to extra have to pay. If you don't go over the usage, you don't have to pay a surcharge. So if you are someone who doesn't drive a lot, my experience with leasing is that my grandmother, when she was getting older, she would lease a vehicle, and then she would get a new vehicle every couple of years. She did not drive around a lot. She drove to the grocery store, to the post office, to come and visit us, go to the beach, things like that, go to the library. She definitely used her car, but she wasn't driving across Canada. She wasn't going on big road trips. She wasn't working and therefore driving it every day to and from work at a far distance, no commuting or anything like that. So she didn't have extra kilometers. She was using a low amount of kilometers. And then she would have a new vehicle every couple of years and not have to worry about the maintenance. She would just take it and drop it off at the dealership. They would deal with the maintenance. They would deal with any issues. She didn't have to worry about it. So that made a lot of sense for her. Personally, I drive a lot. I visit family. I go back and forth to Southern Ontario a fair amount. So I put a lot of kilometers on my vehicle in a year. And so a lease probably wouldn't be a great option for me because I'd end up paying an extra surcharge because I drive the vehicle a lot. So different situations, you decide what's best for you. keeping in mind that amount of how much you're going to drive is going to have an impact on if you're leasing it, how much you're going to pay. So then reading the fine print and going through the process of actually leasing a vehicle is really important to understand before you commit to this. So if you have if part of the thing is a refundable security deposit, then you have to pay that up front. And then you'll get that back if your vehicle's in good condition and you've made all the payments. So that's great. You don't get it back so that means you pay it, but then you don't get it back if there's too much damage or you're missing payments. And the purchase price at the end of the lease, you can choose to buy it. It is going to be lower than the original purchase price of the vehicle because it is no longer a new vehicle. It's depreciated in value, but that's something that you now need to pay on top of everything you've already paid. So you don't own the vehicle in any way. You don't have any equity in the vehicle at all, but you can end up paying a big chunk of money to own it at this point. Again, you decide what makes the most sense for you. So our success criteria, hopefully you can calculate the costs of leasing. Hopefully that is something that you are not comfortable with. And you can explain what's likely to be in the fine print and the process of leasing a vehicle. Hopefully all of that makes sense to you as well. However, if you have any questions, if any of this doesn't make sense to you, please feel free to reach out and contact me. We can talk it through. We can find out more information. This isn't something that I know a ton about, but I'm happy to research and support you in figuring it out if you have questions about it. So give me a call at the office at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free 1-800-667-3703. Send me an email to bronwynslate@nnec.owen.ca, and that's spelled BRONWYN.SLATE, or connect with me through Facebook, where my name is B. Slate Wahsa. Remember, this lesson and all of our other lessons are up on YouTube under a playlist called MEL3E on my channel, which is also called B. Slate Wahsa. So it's a really good way to go and review things, slow things down, pause things, do some practice questions, keep watching the video, learn more. We go through it fairly quickly in 1 hour, but being able to do it on YouTube, you can really go at your own pace, which is a great feature. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., but I teach, of course, from 9 until 11, so that is not a good time to try to get a hold of me. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a lovely day. Miigwech.